our utility panel. And it is a great pleasure for me to introduce Emily Nichols. You're right there. Emily. And she will be going through some presentations from our partners in the investor-owned utilities, as well as One Muni, SMUD. So we have Denver Hines, Albert Chu, and Doreen Ahmed here. And we're going to be talking about work on what are the IOUs and utilities doing related to load flexibility. And Emily has worked both at PG&E and SMUD. And so she is a senior strategist with Momentum. And Emily, please, we'll have some Q&A after this session. Thanks.
Thanks for having us here today. California utilities operate in a state and environment that's really unlike any other. And the work that's happening here at CalFlex Hub is guiding that progress to address climate change in a way that I really believe will assist nationwide. And when we think about who and what entities and what passionate organizations are critical to that transition, California utilities are a major contributor and leader in the way that we decarbonize, the way that we deliver on our load flexibility needs within the state. And so I'm really excited that we have representatives here today from Sacramento Municipal Utilities District, Southern California Edison, and Pacific Gas and Electric Company. And they're going to be sharing with you their expertise and experience in the field deploying demand flexibility solutions to customers. So I'm going to introduce them briefly. They're each going to share with you a little bit about what's going on within their own utility. And then we'll have some time for a discussion and audience Q&A. So remember that you can enter your questions into the Zoom portal, whether you're here in the room or online. That way we'll be able to prioritize as many questions as we can during the session. I'm also going to buy us back at least 5 minutes. That's how I roll. So Denver Hines is a senior R&D system integration at SMUD, innovation in system operation and customers to reduce energy costs nationwide, and has 20 years of research development and product also. Albert Chu is an expert product manager in the integrated grid planning and innovation department at Pacific Gas and Electric Company with over 20 years of load management, ISM, and TRs. He leads their demand response emerging technology and ISM programs and manages all of their tech-related studies, policy development, and strategy associated with that. And then Doreen Ahmed is a senior engineer with Southern California Advanced Group. He does evaluation and demonstrations of high-performance energy buildings, as well as communication, with expertise in developing products and technology for ER, building electrification, and distributed energy program projects.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for being here today and for allowing SMUD to come and be a part of this conversation. It's such an important conversation to have, and I'm a bit abashed to be called an expert in the area of load flexibility, because I feel like there's so much we have to learn, and it's such a space that is rife for innovation and experimentation, and ultimately progress. In Sacramento with SMUD, we're your neighborhood municipal utility district. Our governance is a little bit different than the IOUs. We certainly work closely with the CEC and the CPUC to be part of the California industry that's transitioning to create more participatory opportunities for our customers and their resources to help us better utilize the infrastructure and policy and systems that we have in place. It's opportune for us and for me, being a technologist and one that's inspired and excited about clean energy and a more efficient utilization of the resources that we have in place, to be in Sacramento in this population center in the middle of California, to serve the policymakers at the state capitol, And to be in a situation where we are very closely connected with our community in a fairly small service footprint, um, and largely governed by an elected board of directors that also has the pulse of our community always in mind. With that, we are in a position to move rather quickly with the changes in technology, with the changes in energy, with the trends in policy, um, and sometimes speak about ourselves as an ideal test bed to help lead the way to a cleaner energy future. And as we do that, you can go ahead and move to the next slide. As we do that, of course, it's imperative that we maintain our pact with our customers to keep our system safe, to keep our system reliable, and to deliver that service to them in a way that continues to be affordable. Throughout the 2010s, we made a major step in this transition towards a smarter grid, putting in place technologies and information systems that are now the foundation for a transition to a cleaner grid. 2010 saw our digital metering AMI system in place to replace mechanical meters and monthly meter reads. Allowed us to transition by the end of 2019 to TOU as our default rate. Now in 2020, we have really upped the ante with the announcement of our climate emergency declaration and 2030 zero carbon plan. It is SMUD's plan to decarbonize our energy sector in Sacramento by 2030. It's an extremely ambitious plan. It's one that has some uncertainty associated with precisely how we're going to accomplish that, but we've broken the problem up into 4 key pillars that we're pursuing. It's to transition our thermal energy plants and decommission most of them and transition the remaining plants to less frequent operation and cleaner sources of fuel. The second piece of our plan is to replace that capacity of those thermal plants with proven clean energy technologies in the form of solar and storage technologies, large scale. The third piece that we're here to talk about today is our new technology and business models portion, where load flexibility is the key component of new technology and business models as we see it, alongside long duration energy storage, cleaner fuels, carbon sequestration, other emerging technologies that we're exploring to help us get across that finish line as well. And finally, the fourth pillar of that plan is to do this in a way that is economically responsible and accountable to both our customers and the larger industry. That is by partnering with policymakers, by partnering with technology providers, by partnering with our customers, our community, and funding agencies to lead the way to a cleaner SMUD, a cleaner California, and a cleaner national energy footprint. Next slide. Load flexibility fits into what we call the last 10% of our zero carbon plan. And it's the most difficult part of our zero carbon plan because there's not a clear technology path and a clear economic path to doing that a cost-effective way today. But by putting that stake in the sand at 2030 and that goal of zero carbon, we have created alignment within our organization. We have created urgency within our organization to stop trying and start doing. And that takes at this point, I think, a real shotgun approach to pursuing all different types of technologies, all different types of customers, and very importantly, putting systems in place that are going to be flexible and adaptable and well integrated across our operational domains as we move forward. As you look at the spectrum on the slide, we've built experience with time of use rates, which are a tool for everybody to participate in load flexibility. We've got long experience with, I would call, grid-centric demand response programs or equipment-centric demand response programs that can be fairly expensive to install and operate over a long period of time, but are also highly reliable when it comes to call on those resources in times of grid stress. Our goal at this point is to meld those paradigms into something that finds overlap in those tensions and creates a blend of system optimization through technology integration and intelligence and customer ease and customer value by layering that with programs and incentives that meet our customers where they're at and allow them to continue to make choices in how the energy system interacts with their lifestyle. We can go to the next slide. Today, we have a portfolio of DER programs that we offer to our commercial and residential customers. We are on a path from transitioning to piloting with tens of megawatts of resources to operating reliably hundreds of megawatts of resources by 2030 in such a way that they allow us to displace central generation, to displace infrastructure upgrades, to displace market volatility with well-integrated and operated resources that tap into the capabilities of our customers' technologies and make them an integral part of our balanced grid. The core of this from a residential standpoint is what we call our My Energy Optimizer program, where we're working with technology providers to gain access to thermostats, behind the meter, battery technologies. Electric vehicles, very importantly, looking at the onslaught of mobility electrification that both brings in additional revenue for utilities and creates a huge opportunity to tap into a flexible resource to help with this transition. I'm going to stop there and look forward to the conversation with my colleagues and with Emily and with the rest of the audience here. Thanks.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes, thanks. Oh, barely. Okay, I will. Okay, how about now? Perfect. Hi, good morning, everyone. Albert Chu with PG&E. First, I would like to thank LBNL the opportunity to present some of our programs and pilots in this area. I do have a different angle than Denver. Denver presented smart strategies and visions on load management. And I actually selected few of our pilots to share with you guys what we have learned. So I'm going to go into a little more read. Obviously, PG&E do have our strategies, which we call it TNS, True North strategies on load management. And then we actually have a TNS on the energy efficiency side, on the demand response sides, on the pricing product sides, and and so on. I do work with all of these departments and line of business on a day-to-day basis. I just want to share one story is I was very excited when CEC passed their SB 49 FDAS pool pump standard this month or last month, I don't remember, but I was so excited that I actually told my kids. He was like, oh, how's your day? I was like, oh, you won't believe it. We passed, California passed the, and then they look at me, they were like, huh, what, Daddy, I don't understand. I was like, okay, well, this is exciting because this is the first requirement, as far as I know, maybe in the US, mandating the communicating and load management capability in an appliance in order to be sold Like it's, Energy Start, I have worked with Energy Start connected appliance for many years. Those are voluntary. Those are not mandatory. In order to be a pool pump to be sold or any future appliance to be sold in California, they have to be able to do this, right? This is a big step. 20 years ago, me and Marianne and many others, smart people, way smarter than me, then that worked on, Open ADR standard and 1.0, and we were looking forward to voluntary adoptions on price signals, on demand response signals. And 20 years now, over like today, this month, that becomes a mandatory. To me, it is just really a big step. So I feel like CEC did a tremendous job to make this happen, and I'm sure other states will follow our path. So with that, okay. So, sorry for the color font. It doesn't show up really well here. Okay, so this is one of our pilot that look at residential battery load management. So by leveraging, well, first I actually need to give the credit to Smart because they were the one who developed this concept of leveraging residential batteries and send demand response and price signal without actually changing the customer rate. Okay, we want to understand if we can leverage residential customers and their battery operations and leverage the batteries for grid needs and just provide some sort of compensations on a monthly basis, but without actually changing the customer rate. And we feel like that this is a baby step towards real-time pricing in the future. But for now, like we want to understand how the manufacturers, in this case, Solar Edge, would be able to respond to those rates, both on daily time of use and demand response, and also out real-time pricing. So one of the lessons learned on this pilot is that when we send the time of use signal and compared to the real-time pricing day ahead RTP signals, the battery initially responds the same way. Okay, so we were actually surprised by that results. Okay, because it shouldn't, right? Because the RTP, we were actually using CalISO day ahead RTP signals, and obviously time of use is just static, like high from 4 to 9, and then eventually we have spent a couple months working with the manufacturers to refine their strategies on how to respond to that price and what to do with that price. Okay, and eventually we were able to distinguish time of use and RTP signals. So what it tells you is, even Solar Edge, which have a lot of experience participating in utility demand response program, is my assumption is majority of the manufacturers out there are not quite ready to be able to respond to a price signals and a RTP, they had RTP signals. It's one thing that receiving that signal, I'm sure they will have no problem receiving that signals, but what to do with that signals is going to be very tricky, right? There it's on the automated demand response side, we have been using this knob, right? This scale. It's like, okay, maybe on the left is a happy face, and then on the right side is a dollar sign, right? Like, so the customers would need to dial that scale to allow the manufacturers to understand what is the customer preference, right? And right now, like I just want to ask, like all of the manufacturers out there that can receive price signal, how many actually offer this style to their customers, right? Like if you don't, then how would they determine that is $1.50 high, $1.50 per dollar kWh high, or 15 cents per kWh is high or is low. Right? This is a customer, and every customer is going to have a different preference on that scale. So, okay, obviously, we expect that in the future, the AI is going to help take care of that by, like, for example, the energy management system of in a residential home will know that there is, that I call it kind of like the flexibility score. Right? What is the flexibility score of these customers? Like, does this customer have an EV? Does this customer have a battery? Does this customer have a solar? Like, all of those appliances will increase the flexibility score of this specific customer, and then so in the future, all these manufacturers would understand, right, using AI understanding. Oh, I know that this customer drive that many miles on their EV on this EVA, and therefore, this is the flexibility of this EVA, and therefore this EVA can respond to price this way, but not that way, right? All of this would need to be developed because otherwise, unless you have that scale and allow the customer, and sometimes the customer may not even know how to do, how to do that scale. So it's kind of tricky. Commercial customers have been doing this for a long time, but when it comes to residential customers, it can be this can be like a long way for the experience. Next slide. Okay, it's okay. This VCE pilot actually tests the Calfuse model. I'm not going to the detail of the Calfuse model, but I do want to point out one of the lessons learned. It's the subscription idea. Okay, Calfuse model have the subscription idea to avoid real-time pricing. It's actually an insurance. It's a risk mitigation insurance to not have what happened in Texas, right? That there is a gas crisis, during the winter time, and then therefore, electricity go way high, and then customer bill is going to be like tens of thousands of dollars. So the subscription idea is to help manage that. And in the VCE pilot, and by the way, in this specific pilot, we are actually looking at historical usage to set customer subscription. People were like, oh, you can maybe let the customer to choose to set the subscription, but that risk the possibility of gaming. In this specific pilot, we use customer previous energy usage, and it didn't quite work because it just happened that the year that we used, it was kind of drought, but then what happened was last year we have a lot of rain, so the agriculture pumping behavior is so different, and therefore, like, that subscription that we used historical didn't quite work quite well, and it's just, I'm just trying to show the complexity of, how would we balance insurance, like, when it comes to dynamic rate, how do we balance the insurance for the customer versus of how much risk they can take, and what is the best, there may be no best way, right? Like baseline, there's no best way for baseline, but what is a better way, for different subscriptions modeled for different customer segments. Okay, so my last slide is a voice automation pilot that we have done. We work with a vendor to provide a mobile app and leveraging Amazon Alexa to provide dynamic rate information to residential customers. So it was very successful in my opinion, because we successfully convinced Amazon to allow their yellow ring functions for grid emergency. Okay, so we think that's a big win, because I'm sorry, how many you guys know the yellow ring like if you have Amazon speakers, if there's a yellow ring, meaning that you have a notifications. Either you have a package in front of your door, or your subscribe and save it's coming next week or something like that, right? So we successfully convinced Amazon to allow us to use the yellow ring for grid emergency notifications, such as our public safety power shutoff program. So when customer have a PSPS, then we will ask Amazon to activate their yellow ring, and then customer can ask, oh, hey, Alexa, what's up? And then they will be like, oh, your utility have dispatch a public safety power shutoff event and may impact your area. So please go to your utility to find out more information. Right? This is very important because in the future, we need to leverage different communication channels to communicate different message, including emergency notifications, price, maybe fax alert, right? Also, ISO emergency. So leverage, help working with technology vendors to help develop this type of new communication channel would help us to integrate the experience with our customers. So with that, that's all I have. I look forward to the questions, and thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Oh, good. So how are you all doing? And how are people in the audience and the Zoom? Good morning. So thank you, Albert. Thank you, Denver. And thank you, LBNL, for giving this opportunity to talk about it. So I don't like slides, but so I'm going to talk something that I don't have in a slide. So this is, again, talking about the big picture. So Sankoff and Edison did what they call the Pathways 2045 analysis to figure out how to get to net zero by 2045. And there was an update to that. It's called Countdown to 2045. And part of that analysis, we found that, the requirements of power is going to be 80% more than what we have today. We will need about 90% of vehicles to be medium and light duty vehicles to be electric. Buildings, 95% of buildings has to be electric to get to at 2045 zero net. So based on that, I think there is a lot of need. I can see that we will need a lot of support from LBNL. I saw your slide that you talked about, the pathway, your pathway. And I think to get to where we want to be by 2045, I think there's going to be a lot of partnerships that will be required to get there. And I know Denver touched on some of those strategies that they are doing. I think all the utilities are doing similar kind of strategies to get to, to provide safe, reliable, affordable power. So that was my unslide. So again, but I would recommend you all to go and look at the Countdown 2045 white paper, and there's a lot more details out there, and hopefully the team will work together to get to that. I have this slide which is about the demand response programs that we have. We have both reliability, price responsive, and also actually there's also a couple of pilots that we're doing. So this is, I think, is there. But today I wanted to talk about a couple of other areas, work that I've been doing on the heat pump water heaters. And so can we go to the next slide? So this is what is going to be the smart heat pump water heater program. Tristan, this program, I think, is going to get you into the thousands. So this is basically leveraging electric water heaters, both resistive as well as heat pump water heaters, to put in the controls to do a shift. And as far as I understand, it's going to be about 17,000 water heaters that will be part of this. So this is going to be launched in in the first quarter of next year. So can we go to the next slide? So the connectivity of these technologies, right? How do you get them to talk, communicate and provide the benefits that we are expecting? We as a utility, and the customer also is expecting benefits out of it. So it's to basically shift them from the peak time of use hours, which is 4 to 9 in our area, to 2 hours outside of that. And again, this is, like I said, it's going to be sometime next year. Next slide, please. So this is an under study that we are doing. This is a grid responsive heat pump water heater study. We leveraged the San Joaquin Valley pilot, and to do from an emerging technologies perspective, we picked about 12 customers to go deeper into it, to find out how the water heater behaves, how they respond in the real world, in the field. And also the challenge was also, communication, how do you communicate with those water heaters? And so we're waiting to find out those learnings. Some of those communications and control strategies is all JA13 is also part of that. And I think there's challenges with heat pump water heaters, and we talk about heat pumps, right? And going back to my earlier, if you want to have 95% of all appliances to be electric, and heat pump today is a big chunk of that, right? We need to be able to also not just provide the benefits, the efficiency benefits, but again, to be able to be flexible, right? See where we can use those and how customers can benefit without having any issues. So that's part of these learnings that we are doing. Along with that, we also have a lab where we are trying to test out technologies. So yeah, this is my last slide. But again, I want to talk about, we talk about heat pump technologies. Like I said, there is technologies that's available, but there are challenges, whether it's the installation, whether it's the workforce that is there. But again, I think products will be available because of the commitment we heard from the 10 major manufacturers, right, that they will be able to provide. The other thing is what I found out, a few years ago, there was a need for a product. And the product was, there's infrastructure challenges with upgrading with and putting in heat pump water heaters. And stakeholders got together and came up with this specification for 120 volt heat pump water heater. And within 3 years, there were products in the market. It's still work in progress, but that gives me, I think, the comfort, that when there's a need, I think stakeholders will come together to provide that. Thank you, and look forward to the questions.
Thank you, everyone. So let's do one quick question for our group here, and then we'll move into the audience questions that you've entered into Zoom. Even if you're in the room, you can do that. So I want to ask y'all, when you think about the innovative projects, technologies, and programs in this space, what do you foresee as the most significant in California's energy future? So we've got technologies, we've got products, we've got programs. What for you are you most excited about when you look long-term about what we're going to need here in this state?
I'm not sure if this is the answer that you're looking for, and maybe that'll make it more interesting or not. We need technology systems. We need to stop thinking, and I don't know if everybody's going to like to hear this either, but stop thinking about customers and customer technologies as virtual power plants. That's a terminology that's come to all the conversations over the last couple of years, and we've used it, I think, inappropriately internally at SMUD. The systems that we put in place have to recognize the value of customers, the value of these technologies for customers, to provide services that are meaningful to them on their bill, services that are meaningful to them in their home, and services that are meaningful to them in terms of their impact on the environment. On the utility operational front, yes, we need things that look like virtual power plants. We don't need things that that we think of as behavioral. We don't need things that we think of as encumbered by a bunch of program design rules and constraints. We need integrated systems and integrated roles within utilities to translate between those operational needs of the utility and the lifestyle needs of the customer. And I think that's what we're realizing as we've put in place a lot of programs that are sort of device centric, and try and target particular devices and capabilities, and then hand them off to operators that are working in domains that look much different than that customer domain, and try and tell them this is a virtual power plant, use it. Where they need something that is represented by a set of characteristics, and fits into operational models that are built around creating reliability and built around creating economic efficiency. And so that's a focus that we're looking squarely at right now, is how do we get out of all these individual pilots, and how do we get into fundamental systems and interactions across those operational domains, that embrace the technology of customers and the technology of utilities in terms of putting DERMS systems in place that provide visibility through that value chain, and operational influence throughout that value chain, using different tools like pricing, like rates, like event triggers, and looking at it as a from a systems perspective, and innovating across that system instead of just trying to connect points from one end of the system to the other.
Thanks, Denver. Albert, Treen, what do you foresee as significant in this space in California's energy future?
Well, I think we have a lot of challenges. So there will be a lot of opportunities. Just name a few. I totally agree with what Denver said. And then I think business value for third parties, there needs to be a lot of innovation there. How would, as I mentioned, like there are different functions that required, and it's a chicken and egg thing, right? They think, oh, okay, they don't have a reason to invest on it, but then I'm sure they are all capable of building a lot of those functions. But then they feel like, okay, well, they are not going to wait, until this is coming, and then, but if it doesn't come, then nobody's going to adopt it. So I think that area, it's going to have a lot of innovation, and then I feel like also on the distribution side, how do we, my manager is like, oh, I just, this whole hourly pricing is going to be interesting, because if CalISO have, during the springtime, we have plenty of hydro, and then the CalISO price is going to be low. But then what happens if there's a distribution constraint in this area, and then how does that price reflect to the overall price, for that? So I think that area, we'll have a lot of innovations, to try to merge together, to integrate. Yeah. And I think value stacking, it's like, what does that mean? Like, do participation, how can DR and real-time pricing dynamic rates, coexist together, and how does those values stack together, and new methodologies and policy and measurement and evaluations would need to be developed in order for all of this to make sense.
Just to add to that, let me talk about it from a buildings perspective. As I mentioned, if 95% of buildings are going to be electric by 2045, do we know what we need, right? We need to get there. But again, I think during this time, there will be technologies that'll be coming up that we don't know of, going back to, I never realized a vehicle could drive itself, right? I can just sit out there and the car is driving. So again, what is the customer needs, and also what we as a community can provide to the customer that meets their needs. And their needs could vary, right? Today, it's maybe pricing. Tomorrow could be something else that could drive them. And for us, we also look at the climate. We look at low GWP refrigerants for heat pumps. So I think technologies could be changing from now till 2045. And again, I think how do we accelerate those technologies to come on board, right? And I think I'm looking at your tagline, right? Bringing science solutions to the world. So I think this is coming up with the needs and also engaging that community that can provide that. When we did studies on customers' needs, energy was never on the top, right? It never comes up, right? It's like 4 or 5 or 6. So how do we bring that to the top? I think that's what I would see.
Great. Scott, let's go to questions on Zoom.
Sure thing. The first question is, what is the role of community choice energy agencies in load flexibility? For example, in Pacific Gas and Electric's territory, they already purchase and sell the majority of electricity generation.
Let me repeat the questions and see if I get it right. How do utilities see us working with CSA to progress the goal of load management? Is that the question?
Yes, I'd say so. Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely critical, and especially dynamic rate. Right? Dynamic rate have a generation portion and a distribution portion, and we need to work very closely with CCAs and all of our CCA partners to make this happen. I'm co-leading a working group, DFOIR working group 2 with pricing partner managers, and on the system required for to develop, to support the Kelvin rate, and the conversation is how do we develop for our customers, we can develop both for gen and distribution price, but for CCA customers, then they need to develop their gen price. Okay, how do we develop their subscription? How do we find out their subscriptions? And how do they upload their RIN number to our bill? And all of those, absolutely critical. So it's something I'm so like we'll fail in this if we do not work with CSA. So we definitely see them as a major partner, to for load management and dynamic rate moving forward.
Okay, our next question is for Denver. Under SMUD's SB 100 planning, they mentioned modeling expected infrastructure investment savings over the next 1 to 2 decades for optimizing demand flexibility and other distributed energy resources. Can you comment on these analyses?
Can you give me the key elements of that question one more time, Scott?
Yeah, so under SB 100 planning for modeling infrastructure investment savings over the next 1 to 2 decades as it relates to demand flexibility and other distributed energy resources.
I don't work super closely with our planning groups, and I'll try and answer it from my perspective. A lot of the focus on flexibility value at SMUD has been in the operational domains as energy resources in our markets, and we're starting to explore the capabilities of the resources to solve real-time constraints on our distribution system. Our infrastructure planning paradigms and our commodities planning paradigms are a little bit harder for us to approach at the scale of flexibility resources that we have today, where we're particularly talking about many megawatts of services being addressed at the infrastructure and market level. I don't feel like I have a really acute answer to that question, or I might not even be getting at the heart of what they're asking. But but the operational and planning paradigm have value for the DER that we need to stack and recognize in order to ultimately make load flexibility cost effective. If we're again grabbing unique devices and trying to provide a grid service from them, we're going to have a tough time penciling that out. We need to take a collection of devices and figure out what the total value capability of them that they can provide across operational and planning domains, I think, to reach the point of cost effectiveness. That's what we're striving for, and I don't think we're there yet in terms of the scale of the pilots and the level of integration to be able to achieve that tipping point in cost effectiveness.
Okay, final question. This is relating to knowledge transfer. What are some of the lessons learned from any scale of demand response program or time varying rate offers with customers as it relates to adoption and participation? And how are you planning to incorporate insights from those programs into future plans?
Anybody? Adoption and participation. We've got to appeal to customers in terms that are meaningful to them and resonate with their values. And that means not speaking to them in utility-centric terms. And I'm gonna say, and not speaking to their technologies in utility-centric terms either. I think that is what makes pricing such a value commodity to pass through operational domains, because it's something that our customers value, it's something that our planners value, it's something that when I say pricing, I mean cost. It's something that our distribution operators value. It's something that's easily recognizable and accumulated throughout that value chain, so that we can make it simple to connect that value across those domains using price as an operational signal. Albert talked a little bit about how we're experimenting with decoupling the price as a grid optimization signal from the price as a rate or billing instrument, and trying to package up that precise optimization that's allowable from cost optimization signals and package that up into something for customers that's easy to understand, that's predictable, and that continues to put a lot of risk on the utility and the work that they're doing to optimize through all these new technologies. The balance between supply and demand.
Join me in thanking our guests today, Denver, Albert, and Jareen. They're going to be here for the break that we're about to enter, so please